Okay, we're doing a class on the 20th of Cheshvan. Okay, so the class, when I sent out the title, the original Zoom that didn't work, was the miracles in our lives that are hidden inside tests or trials, life's tribulations. Now, we all have a lot of them going on these days, but we're going to learn some Chassidus about it that I think will really illuminate and lighten up the whole situation. So I first want to show this here's a little cue card, if you can see it. It has the word nisayon, which means a trial or a test, a difficulty in a person's life. And inside it, you can see that the root word for miracle, which is nes, is actually in the word nisayon. There's the miracle hidden inside the test. So that I just wanted to show that little card so you can see it. Okay, so the Hebrew word for a test, a trial, a tribulation in a person's life, nisayon, has hidden within it the word nes, which means miracle. So the miracle is already a given inside the test, but we have to find out how to discover it. So a lot of the teachings I'm going to be taking are from Rabbi Ginsburgh's books and lectures and writings, some of which he just wrote very recently, and that was part of what prompted me to do this, because I was very inspired by it. So Rabbi Ginsburgh teaches that every trial or tribulation that we go through in life is actually a test of faith. It's actually a test of emunah. And he explains even further that a person might think that a trial in life, a difficulty that they're trying to go through in life, is something that you have to work very hard at. You have to really put yourself into it and try and overcome it, try and leap over it, try and resolve it. But it's not about how hard you work. That's not the definition of what's called a nisayon. A nisayon is only and exclusively, literally, when a person's faith is being tested. Oh, how lovely. So when a person's faith is being tested, then it's really something quite amazing. Welcome, Nechama. How lovely to see you. Or not see you, but that you're here. Thank you. So when a person's faith is being tested, that's what's called, in the classical Torah tradition, a nisayon, a trial or a test. So let's talk a little bit more about faith, actually faith and confidence, because if that's what the nature of a test or a trial, a nisayon is, then we want to understand what's being tested. Since we're being told that it's our faith that's being tested, we want to really understand what this means. So the study, this is again taken from Rabbi Ginsburgh's writings, the study of faith, which is emunah, in Hashem, and the study of trust or confidence, which is called bitachon in Hashem, is foundational for all those who seek to walk in the ways of God. And we strive to constantly strengthen the powers of emunah and bitachon in our soul. That's our work all the time. Our daily work is to really strengthen our faith and our confidence, our trust in God. Faith is believing that all that God does is for the best, it's goodness. And confidence means the belief that everything will be tangibly and visibly good. There is a difference between them. Faith occurs when we don't understand something, and the continuation will maybe explain this more. When we don't understand something, but we believe in God, we're God's children, and we believe that it's for good, even though it's not revealed yet. So that's in the future. It's not actively happening at the moment. Bitachon is something else. Bitachon is called active confidence, active trust in God. And it means that it's going to be tangibly and visibly good now as it's happening. It's a different level. Okay, so Rabbi Ginsburgh continues. Faith is the power of the soul that we employ when we do not understand why something is happening or why something happened. And it doesn't make sense to us. We absolutely could apply all of our intellectual powers to it and not be able to get out of it and not be able to get any answers to the situation that's happening. And that's when we nullify or we go beyond our understanding and our rationale and our intellect, and we accept that God is orchestrating everything for the good. What does that acceptance entail? What does that emunah entail? It means that we come to a level of calm, what may be called menuchas nefesh. Now, I'm not saying that that's easy to achieve when you're in the middle of a test. It's actually quite hard to achieve. And we don't achieve it through our intellectual, rational reasoning why we should get there. It's really, we have to go above and beyond that. We have to go into this level of emunah peshuta, of simple faith, and just totally give ourselves over, which is in a sense nullifying ourselves. There's a tremendous amount of nullification, of self-nullification and betul that actually has to come into play when you're in the midst of a trial, of a nisayon from Hashem, in order to be given over and just, okay, Hashem, I'm yours. It's your world. You're the boss. Whatever's going to happen, I'm just going to walk with you, and whatever's going to happen, that's what it is. It's just really being given over. A lot of bitul, nullification. So that's what it says. We empty ourselves. We nullify ourselves. And that's when it is that we reach a level of menuchas nefesh. Because if we let it go, let God, as they say. If we let it go and it's out of our control, and we just are given over to Hashem, then we could stay calm. We could stay in a place of more balance, because there's really nothing we can do about it except trust Hashem, have faith in Hashem. There's a beautiful conversation I had with an amazing Tzedekis woman in the Svat community 2 days ago, and she was asking me how I was doing, as some of you did, and I am progressing, Baruch Hashem. It's slow, but it is a progress of growth on my own part, by Hashem's ratzon. She said, whenever you come into a situation where you have no idea what's going on, and you just need to turn to God, say Tehillim Kuf. Say the Tehillim, it's called the Tehillim of Thanksgiving, Tehillim 100. She happens to be a wife of a doctor who sees many, many people every day, day in, day out, whose lives are being challenged beyond what we could ever imagine. And she says Tehillim Kuf all the time throughout the day. And it's a prayer, it's called the prayer of thanksgiving. So I asked her to clarify that. So I said, so are you thanking God? Let's say it's me. Am I thanking God when I say that Tehillim for the trial, for the test, the nisayon I'm going through right now? She said, no, that's not what it is. The focus is you're thanking God that very soon Mashiach and the Geula are going to come. And when Mashiach enters, it says that everyone will be healed. So in advance, you're thanking God that everyone will be healed of the difficulties that they're going through, whether it's spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. I thought that was beautiful. So I used to say it a lot, now I started saying it again. So well recommended, Tehillim 100. All right? Now that was faith. Let's turn to now trust, confidence in God. Confidence is a more active involvement on our part. When we are netzach, when we are sure that all will be good, and it's noted that when the Rebbe said, trach good v'zayin good, think good and it will be good, that was the keynote of bitachon. That's the keynote. Think good and it will be good. It will actually become tangible, visible goodness. It will turn around to be revealed good, not concealed in the future. At some point, maybe we'll just have faith, but maybe we won't really actually see it. We're just going to trust God and have faith in God. Bitachon, the Hebrew word for confidence, shares a root with havtacha, which means a promise. They share the same root, bitachon and havtacha. So my bitachon is the confidence in God's promise that all will be good as I envision that good. Bitachon, trust, confidence is the light of day, and doubt is called a shadow. Doubt is a lack of trust, and it casts a shadow on our consciousness. However, a person who is in active bitachon does not have a shadow. They don't have a shadow of a doubt. They're just totally having trust in God. They are sure, they are betach. And like the well-known expression that the Rebbe really loved, it will become obvious and revealed good. That was what the Rebbe often said in a bracha, that it will be obvious and revealed good. It will become tangible. So this is the nes. This is the miracle in the nisayon, in the trials and tribulations of life, is that inside the trial is already hidden the miracle of what can become obvious and revealed good. And the reason that we're going through the test is in order to see that and bring it out. As my friend Deborah Alexander actually used to say, she used to say, nisayon is that you have to pull the nes out of the nisayon. You have to pull the miracle and reveal it out of the test. And I think that's very true. So there's more to understand about this concept of what is the miracle, what is the change point within a trial. So this is a very recent teaching by Rabbi Ginzburgh, and actually it was just, I think, a week ago, about Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, we know, is the one who is chesed, and he's a person of tremendous faith. It's his total faith and connection with God that created hundreds, and probably maybe more than hundreds, maybe thousands of converts who turned around and left the world at his time, the world of idolatry, and began to believe in the one God. It was through the work of Avraham and Sarah. So Avraham went through 10 great tests in his life, very large trials and tribulations, where he had complete faith in God. And the 10th test, which is called Akedas Yitzchak, and it's a test that is full of paradox on a level that it's impossible for our intellect to wrap around it and understand it really at all. This is the test, the 10th test of Avraham. And for him, it was a true test because it tested his faith. He was promised that his descendants will be as the stars of the heavens, and that it will come through his son Yitzchak. And Akedas Yitzchak is about taking his son to become a, perhaps, sacrifice. Take your son up to the mountain, right? So a true test is one that actually is testing our faith. And that's really what happened in this story of Akedas Yitzchak. And it happens, the nisayon is when the challenge that we face contradicts what we believe in. Just let me repeat that again. A nisayon of our faith is when the challenge that we're facing contradicts what we believe in. So here we're being told to have faith, we're being told to have trust in God, and the actual test, the experience that we're going through directly, paradoxically contradicts that faith. That's a nisayon. We face a trial when our belief in God's goodness and the sense of the menuchas nefesh we have that is supposed to fill us when we fulfill God's ratzon, when we're really tuned into God and we're doing the mitzvot and we're living a Torah life and life is good and things are happening in our lives, and because we're attached to God, somebody needs to mute themselves, so maybe I need to try and mute everybody. Mute all. Okay, I'll do that. Okay. Did it work? Yeah. Okay. I hope everybody can still hear me. You can hear me, Deborah?
I think I'll be trying to get on soon.
I got it.
So.
She just came in and I put her on. She's coming in. Thank you. Okay, so we face a trial when our belief in God's goodness and the sense of menuchas nefesh, the sense of calm that is supposed to fill us, and we're fulfilling God's will, does not materialize. We're leading our lives, we're leading our godly lives, we're on a certain path with Hashem, we're doing mitzvot, we're being Jewish women, and there's a certain sense of a flow, of being in the flow with God, that things materialize, okay, they're working out. When does that not happen? When God decides we need a test, a real test, and that it doesn't flow in a way of continuation. It may not even be really good, but there's a continuation, there's a connection. During a test, that all changes. It doesn't materialize that way. It doesn't come into reality that way. And Rabbi Ginzburgh asks in this teaching on Avraham Avinu, what's the purpose of God's blurring faith that's caused by a test? That's an interesting phrase. That God does something purposefully. He makes the clarity of the picture of our reality and our connection to Him foggy, blurred. It's no longer clear. We don't actually even know, is God here with me or not in the test? So it says in Devarim 13-4, for Hashem your God is testing you to know whether you love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. The literal meaning of this is difficult to comprehend. Why? Because after all, God knows everything. God is omniscient. God knows the future. God knows who we are at the present. God knows what we're passing through and what we're struggling with. And what our choices will be, God knows, including whether we'll be successful to pass the very test that God is giving us at this very moment. That Hashem knows what's concealed in our hearts in the present. And Chassidut explains that in the verse, God is testing you, is not about God knowing. Rather, it points to ourselves. It points to us. It's for us to know. The test of faith is not about what God knows. It's about us knowing. In the case of a trial, a test, and nisayon, to freely choose to attach to God goodness and faith through our faith is about us coming to know a greater level of ourselves and our connection to God. That's really the test of faith, because God knows all. And this is when it turns our concealed love of God into manifest and revealed love of God and the love of God's goodness. This is the simple meaning, not so simple really, this is the simple meaning of a nisayon. What happens? In the test, faith needs to be revealed. It's not about God's knowing what we might choose or who we are, the difficulties and challenges we're facing personally, how we're making it through the nisayon, rooting us on. It's not about God knowing what's going to be. It's about us coming to know ourselves through faith, through our faith in God. It's transformative to ourselves, and that's why it's being given to us. And this is the part that really got me, there is a deeper level to a test, to a trial, to a nisayon. That was what was called the simple level. And it's not simple. If anybody's been through a test, that is not simple. Yet there is a deeper level. There's an inner meaning in which faith is weak. Our faith is weak. All right, from the beginning we actually understand maybe that's the case. That's why we're going through a test. But it's weak in that it seems like God is not in the situation. I'm in a situation, I'm in an experience, I'm going through a trial, a tribulation right now, where God's foreknowledge of the future and God's knowledge and God's being of divine providence seems to have completely disappeared from the picture. completely disappeared. There is no certainty that all will work out for the good or the best. It's not certain. It's not known. It's not betach. It feels like God is not in the picture at all. That's this deeper level of a test. The experience that God is out of the picture or missing in action, so to speak, chas v'shalom, requires each of us to reach very deeply into ourselves. It's not about now reaching out to Hashem and saying, Hashem, get me out of this. Heal me. Take away this challenge intellectually, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Tell me what you need me to do. I'm willing to leap there. That's the simple level of the test. Now, the picture's black. We're in a fog of complete uncertainty. We don't sense God, we don't feel God, we actually feel that God is completely not present. And we have to call upon a very deep level of ourselves. This is now, Rabbi Ginzburgh is explaining the test that Avraham Avinu went through on Akedas Yitzchak. This was the level of that test. He says one has to look and reach deeply into yourself and call upon your endurance, your determination, your inner strength, and your love of God. He says 4 things. We have to call deeply upon our endurance, our determination, our inner strength, and love of God. This is when God gives us independence. He's given it over to us. When we do call upon our inner resources that we've developed over the years, right? Everybody has them. Actually, we inherited them. Ultimately, all of these aspects of endurance, determination, inner strength, and love of God will converge. They'll become completely unified and united. And when that happens, we will perceive that God was actually with us all along throughout the trial. All of this was planned by God, but we have to overcome the trial by employing our own strength and our own depth of character. It's not that we're going to see God at all in the picture until we really call upon those deep resources of endurance, determination, inner strength, and love of God. And then when we bring them up and out, and that's how we're going to be completely betul, really selfless and nullified and given over to God, even though we don't sense God is there, we're just going to have these resources that we're going to rely upon. That's when we see the test in this light, and we observe, or we come to realize that the strength we needed to successfully withstand the trial was already handed over to us in the trial itself. It's the nace that's hidden in the nisayon. When we were given the trial, it was to develop a level of active involvement with the deepest recesses of our soul, and the strength and our determination and our devotion and endurance to God, our love of God, to bring those inner strengths into the manifest level of our lives. So that goes beyond us just having faith. That's really a lot of work and a lot of hard work on yourselves to transform into that place in the midst of a picture and an experience that's completely paradoxically the opposite of how normative life, let's say, with God is in this world. So he says that's the hidden miracle, the nace. This was the test of Akedas Yitzchak of Avraham Avinu. Every test of faith in God and God's goodness actually expresses God's faith in us. Let me just read that again. This is the deeper level of a test. Every test of faith in God and God's goodness actually expresses God's faith in us. When God gives us space to express our independence and our free will in how we live our lives, and that through the test we will not fall apart and go away from God and the godly path, that we will not despair, that we will not fall into a place of inability to move, inability to seek, inability to basically, in a sense, attach to the faith that God has in us, attach to that with a trust that's on a very deep level of the soul. When God gives us the space to express this independence, and we don't despair, but instead we strengthen ourselves and reaffirm our faith and love in God, then that's when we come to this level of that everything converges into unity in the test, the endurance and the determination, the inner strength that we have, the love of God and the attachment to God's goodness. It all becomes unified. And that is actually when the nisayon is over and the nes gets revealed. And it may not happen in a moment. It may actually take a lot of work, and it could take time to really come to this realization of there is nothing but God. There's no place to go except to trust God. Only trust God. Ein od milvado. There is nothing but God. This was the nature of the test, that God has faith in us. God believes in us and in our deep resources that are implanted within us all of our growing lives, that whenever we face situations in life, we'll be able to pull up those resources and grow forward and illuminate the world through the choices that we make, despite the darkness of the picture. There's a beautiful story that also illustrates this, that was written by an Israeli man many, many years ago. What was the name of the book? Maybe it was called A Time for Love. I actually don't remember. It's quite old. And it's a story of an Israeli man when he was very young and he was a soldier. And it was, I guess, maybe during the very first war up north, a Lebanon war that was like before my time. And he was with his small troop in a certain border position, and it was before the crack of dawn in the morning, and everything was quiet in the camp, when all of a sudden they heard noise. They were on a little hilltop, and they saw on the horizon enemy tanks, 3 of them, coming at them. They were completely unprepared. And in the panic of responding to this, as they reached the top of the hill, and in a moment they would be able to see the encampment of the soldiers isolated there. So all the soldiers ran in a certain direction, and one soldier, who is the man who's writing the book, ran in the opposite direction, in confusion. And when he realized that had happened, that he'd actually run in the direction towards visibility of the 3 tanks that were coming at him, he fell down on the ground in the sand, and he started to say the Shema. That's it, my life is over. He's saying the Shema, lying in the sand, the end of his life. And suddenly had this very strong, voice come up in him. Fool, get up. You're not allowed to say the Shema and just let yourself die. Get up, move, do something. And he was sort of shocked, awake. And he saw in his peripheral vision that actually their machine gun tank, which was a very small tank compared to the enemy tanks coming at him, was quite close to him. He'd fallen down in the sand near it. So he starts to crawl on the sand. He manages, with the last ounce of his very being and strength, to climb up into the machine gun tank, and he starts firing it. And the enemy was so surprised that there was any response at all to their early morning dawn surprise call that they retreated. They left. And all of the soldiers were saved. And he then collapsed in a complete, sweat on the sand out of there, and he just was trying to breathe. And all the soldiers came around him, including the head of the unit. You saved our life, you saved our life. And he just was like, let me be, let me be. And he said the only thought he could think of then, which was very strong for him and actually started his path of tshuva, was when he was a child, he would wake up and he would say, Modeh ani lefanecha. And he realized that he always believed as a child throughout his life that he was woken up in order to have faith in God. And at that moment, in that situation as a soldier, it turned around for him. And he said, that's not it. God woke me up this morning because God believes in me. God has faith in me. That's the nature of what we're talking about in this class today. This idea that God gives over to us on a level of independence, and ki'ilu, it seems as if God disappears from the picture, so that we really have to interact and depend upon our very inner resources and strength of our soul without God being visibly present. And when we do that, we bring about not only a revelation of godliness that's very great, but actually the greatest win in the test is that we bring about a new level of ourselves, that God tested us in order to develop that in us. And it's a situation that requires a lot of bitachon and faith, and a lot of perseverance, a lot of, as he says, endurance, determination, inner strength, and love of God. I would say that those are accurate words to describe what one has to go through. Even through a lot of time, you still have to call up those same resources. So I hope that that is a very interesting insight for you on this beautiful fall day that we're having here in the mountains of Sfat. And on that, we'll